Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight, I want to talk to you about some interesting developments that are happening when it comes to actions now being taken by Israel against the observing Orthodox Jewish people inside of Israel. They are escalating their war and their terror against the Jewish community inside of Israel. And I'm also going to be talking to you about recent footage coming from Hezbollah describing exactly what they targeted when they had their attacks when it comes to the Kiryat, the main hub of control of the genocide when it comes to Israel, alongside, of course, latest developments. We're going to start off with the conscription attempts. We all know, you all know by now, how much Israel is trying to enforce conscription against the Orthodox community in Israel. As a matter of fact, we've had a law for the first time in history forcing the country to force members of the Orthodox community to serve in the Israeli army. Ever since its inception, Israel gave the Jewish Orthodox community inside of Israel exemption from serving in the army. They usually study Torah and they have their own communities and they do not serve in the army, and they are still funded by the state. However, following the 7th of October, more and more soldiers were lost when it comes to Israel, and many people fled the country, including plenty of those of serving age or actual reservists. And you've had, of course, many people killed, many wounded, many suffering from PTSD and other problems, and many refusing to serve from those who the conscription applies on inside of Israel. So, of course, they resorted to the Jewish community, the Orthodox Jewish community inside of Israel. And this is exceptionally important. This is something exceptionally important, and I'll tell you why. Israel sells itself to the world as the Jewish state, as the only country for the Jewish people. Yet when you go and ask actual observing Jews, not Zionists, they will tell you how much they hate that country and how much they disagree with it, including those inside of Israel, not just people outside of Israel, including those inside of Israel. So I had this report here on the website of Yediot Ahronot, Ynet, about the conscription. And as you can see, this image is from Israel, ladies and gentlemen. Visibly, you can see these are Jewish people. These are Orthodox Jewish people. And what do they say? The Zionist army does not serve its citizens. It serves Zionism. Is anyone watching? You know, these people who constantly talk about Israel and Judaism and falsely using the already false term anti-Semitism to label anyone opposing this country. Are they seeing these images? Are they actually observing and reading what's happening in Israel? And here another guy raises a banner saying, I would rather die as a Jew than live as a Zionist. We will die and we will not serve in the army. They would rather die than serve in the army, rather die as Jews than serve in a Zionist army. Who are these people? These are Israeli Jewish people from the Orthodox community. Observing Jews, those who are religious, not Zionists, not those who are ethnicizing Judaism and using Judaism as a front for a neo-colonialist project. So I hope that more and more people start to watch these images coming from Israel and see them and actually read about them, rather than constantly spew propaganda and unsubstantiated information. And when it comes to the article itself, it was speaking about Israel Katz, the defense minister, the new defense minister of Israel. He surprised many people by actually sending the orders now. No one from Netanyahu's government sent the orders yet. They were trying to speak with the Orthodox community and try to reach a solution that wouldn't increase the tensions between the Orthodox community and the state. Now, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu relies on Jewish political parties, as in not the religious Zionists, but actual Orthodox, the Ashkenazi and the Mizrahi or Sfaradi Jewish people. They're both in his government, and they're there for a reason. They're there to get the benefits and try and stop Netanyahu and the government from implementing such laws. Now, the way they're trying to sell it is they're only going to send 7,000 orders, although legally it's applying on everyone. However, the government is trying to introduce it slowly so that it can later expand. They had several attempts before and they failed. As a matter of fact, the Kfir brigade in the Israeli army was meant to be for the Orthodox community. However, it started to attract religious Zionists rather than people from the Orthodox community, therefore becoming the squatting establishment brigade inside of the IDF. And in many cases, they had problems and infighting between other brigades. And now they are the main actors in the genocide in Gaza, because these people firmly believe in this messianic approach when it comes to Zionism. So this report said Defense Minister Israel Katz announced this morning that the 7,000 conscription orders ordered by the fired minister Yoav Gallant to issue the ultra-Orthodox Jews will be sent gradually starting next Sunday. So even the 7,000 orders will be sent gradually, not all at once. Again, in an attempt to slowly introduce this to the Orthodox community so that it can be acceptable and so that later Israel can expand the reach when it comes to conscription against the Orthodox community. But they're having none of it. They are having none of it. They said during the week, the IDF presented the Gali ombudsman in Rabbi Miara with factual data from which it appears that it needs to increase the IDF by at least 10,000 soldiers, of which 7,500 are for combat duties. That is also for yeshiva students or students who study the Torah and Judaism. She determined that a delay in issuing the presence orders or issuing them in a small amount that would harm the possibility of meeting the commitment given the High Court to recruit 4,800 ultra-Orthodox police officers is against the law. And the announcement of God stated that the Minister of Defense made it clear that he intends to hold an in-depth dialogue with all parties in order to try and promote an agreed solution which will allow for a true integration of the ultra-Orthodox Jews in the IDF in order to ease the burden on the regular, permanent, and reserve soldiers who fight valiantly and give their lives for Israel's security. More like cowardly and give their lives for Netanyahu and for no reason. Along with the preservation of the world of the Torah. They're trying to make it appealing for these people. And again, this is a move coming from the government, by the way, because they are worried. They don't want to be at odds now. They don't want to open another front when it comes to the Supreme Court in Israel. The Supreme Court in Netanyahu, they already have a very tense relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, especially with his attempts to have this judicial reform that would give him full control over the judicial system in Israel, allowing him to appoint whoever he wants without any scrutiny, only by passing it through certain figures in his government that are totally under his thumb. So basically, Netanyahu can choose the Supreme Court people and who heads the Supreme Court. And of course, they're trying to make it out as if it's again not going to be against the religion, fulfill their task in the IDF, alongside maintaining their religious lifestyle. Protests here when it comes to, I'll show you when the ad ends, when it comes to the people actually going, serving, they were still protesting. These are not the most aggressive protests, by the way, from them, but they were just some of the protests against So they're actually protesting against the people going and serving, and anyone from the community who even entertains the idea. Now, on mainstream media, they're trying to underplay the situation. Of course, some of the slogans that they were raising represent a level of their approach when it comes to this. You know, the Zionist army does not serve its citizens, it serves Zionism. We'd rather die as Jewish people we'd rather die as Jews than live as Zionists. We would die and not serve in the army. Because you had statements coming from the top figures in the Orthodox community inside of Israel saying that we will immigrate, we will leave the country. We will leave the country if that means not serving. So we wouldn't serve in the army. And you're talking about a community that has over 1.2 million people inside of Israel. So although they really need them, it's going to be very difficult for them, even with these small numbers. And like the example that I've given you with this brigade from the IDF, it was Netzach Yehuda, not Kfir. Netzach Yehuda was supposed to be the brigade that attracts the Orthodox community. Kfir, I think it was another one. But Netzach Yehuda, or the Eternity of Judea, was supposed to be a brigade in the IDF that is attractive for the Orthodox community. However, that was the brigade that ended up attracting the religious Zionism movement, the squatters like Smotrich and Ben Gvir and these people. So this is indicating, of course, that Israel is struggling heavily when it comes to soldiers, when it comes to getting people to fight. And like I said before, you have over 1 year into this war, many people in Israel turned 18. And if all of them served, then you would make up the numbers that are required, at least when it comes to this 10,000 number that they're claiming, although the figures are likely to be much higher than that. Where are they? Many people are fleeing the country for good, not coming back, and many are refusing. Again, reports coming from Israel say that 25% of the reservists are refusing to serve now, and at best you have between 75 to 85% people serving. So actually going in and following the orders, more and more people are refusing to serve. And again, refusal to serve in Israel is considered a taboo. A small minority of the people in Israel, those who bravely resist Israel's war crimes, will go and say, we refuse to serve based on moral principles because our army is an occupation army and it commits war crimes and a genocide, and they risk being imprisoned, of course, and there are some of them. And the rest of them just don't want to serve because they know what the situation is. That was the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And then I want to talk to you about the Hezbollah attack yesterday. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, Hezbollah targeted the Kiryat, the main hub of the Israeli military command establishment, the defense ministry, the most strategic hub, where everything is controlled, where the genocide is run, where the decisions are made. So we had more images and clarification coming from Hezbollah, including a couple of videos that showed parts of their weapons used when it comes to this attack that happened on the Israeli Kiryat next to Tel Aviv. With missiles and drones, scenes from the targeting of the Kiryat deep inside Tel Aviv. And here they're saying with Qadir 2 missiles, and this is one of the videos that they published. Bit of translation, by the way, for those of you who don't know Arabic, of course, that would be probably the majority of you. The Kiryat base includes the Ministry of War and the General Command, and it includes the War Room and the Command and Control and Observation Centers of the Army for the Air Force inside of Israel. And these were some of the drones that they launched on the Kiryat. This is upon arrival, of course, inside the occupied territories from settlers. And this is the Qadir 2 missile. This is a ballistic missile. This is one of Hezbollah's bigger missiles. Not the biggest, but one of the bigger missiles that can hit the heart of Israel. And they used it. That was the first video that they shared when it comes to the attack yesterday. And they also published another video. I'll just share a couple of images from this video. It's a 3D image of the location, right? The Azrieli buildings inside of Tel Aviv that are commercial buildings. And this is the Rabin base in central Tel Aviv, formed in 1948. And then, okay, why did it stop now? Okay, hold on. Let's see. And here, buildings to do with the Israeli Air Force too. They have everything. They monitor everything, Hezbollah. Human resources, the investigations branch in the intelligence community inside of Israel as well. This is the Kiryat. Here is the command base of the Israeli Navy and the research unit here and the operations unit, or called the Bor. And of course, all of these buildings have massive bunkers beneath them so that Netanyahu can run away very quickly if something happens. Well, not just him, of course, everyone else. And here they're saying it's a communication center and a defensive command as well, technology, logistics. So basically, you get the idea. They are monitoring every part of the Kiryat Hezbollah. They know exactly what they're targeting. So they have this 3D image that they 3D video that they generated, so that they know exactly where they reach and what to target and from which location. And this is the Defense Ministry and the IDF command base as well. The size, how many levels, what's on the southern part, what's on the northern part, which office, the first branch, the second branch, all of it. I mean, Hezbollah, when it comes to intelligence, and they prove time after time, including by things like this, how calculated they are and how sophisticated they are with their attacks on Israel. It's not like they target any old thing. They know exactly what they're targeting. And again, you don't hear any confirmations coming from Israel most of the time. Even today, there were reports coming from Israel about many explosions happening again in central Tel Aviv without saying anything else. All that we heard was, we have a lot of attacks, a lot of explosions happening inside of Tel Aviv without anyone saying anything. And that was, of course, alongside the regular attacks that they are conducting every single day now, very deep into Israeli territories. Now, what Israel is doing now is intensifying the attacks in Lebanon. We're having a report that a draft has been submitted to the Lebanese side coming from the US administration to show them what they are proposing. The report also confirmed that Donald Trump had a look at the draft and he supported it too. But the confirmations that are coming from Lebanon, before the details about this draft itself, say that, well, we're only talking about 1701, UN Resolution 1701. That is basically a resolution that happened after the 2006 war. And all the talk is about enforcing the 1701, but from both sides, from the Israeli side and from the Lebanese side. And what many people like to ignore, especially because Israel constantly says that, well, Hezbollah breached the resolution, they have arms in the southern part of Lebanon. Well, what did you do? Israel, according to monitoring coming from the Lebanese army, the United Nations, and the resistance in Lebanon, had 39,000 breaches of UN Resolution 1701 in the past 18 years. 39,000 breaches, including attacks, including airspace invasions, including survey, including many things. 39,000. But they, of course, with their entitled and arrogant approach, they want to enforce things only on the Lebanese without anything being enforced on them. They want, Syria not to pass arms to Lebanon. But they are entitled to receive arms from the US, from the UK, from the genocide cartel to continue their genocide and mass war crimes and massacres. That's fine. But anyone resisting them, they shouldn't. And they need to have freedom of movement when it comes to Lebanon. And those days are over. I mean, they are so over these days. And I don't know what they're thinking, the decision makers inside of Israel, dreaming about enforcing such things on the Palestinian resistance and on the Lebanese resistance. I mean, if the Palestinian resistance hasn't submitted after so much destruction and massacres in Gaza, do you think Lebanon will? Do you think the Lebanese resistance will, to be more accurate? Because not everyone in Lebanon supports them. Like the situation in Palestine, not everyone in Palestine supports the Palestinian resistance. And these things are important to mention, by the way, because what we're talking about is beyond nationality, is beyond your religious affiliation, is beyond your ethnicity. We're talking about a case of human rights and what approach each individual takes and what stances people take when it comes to cases of human rights and opposing wars, opposing war crimes, and standing up against massacres. These things don't have a nationality, and they also don't have a religion. Yes, religion can support standing up for what's right and justice but that's why you will see many people having far better positions without being Palestinian and in many cases without being religious too, better than some Palestinian people, some Lebanese people, and some Muslims and some Arabs as well. And that's something exceptionally important, because there are people, especially from the propagandist side, or those who serve Zionists from all across the world, whether they're in the Christian world or Muslim world, whether from the Arab world. And don't forget, the majority of Zionists are not Jews. Let's not forget that Zionism was established as a Christian movement in the beginning. They would like to portray it as something else. And Israel always likes to bang on about this victimhood, and they constantly talk about this Jewish people and the unsubstantiated and falsely labeled anti-Semitism label. But all of that is no longer working. I mean, they're trying hard to make it work, but it is not working. So, going back to the draft, from Lebanon, we still haven't had a lot of elaboration about this draft. But what I was intending to talk about is the fact that before any potential of a ceasefire happening, that's assuming we have any pending ceasefire, because you know what happened in the past year, Israel likes to intensify. And their intensification comes in the form of punishing people, of massacres. I mean, if you follow me on X, or you can see the images that I sometimes post are very harsh coming. This is what they do. And they intensify that when they come closer to a ceasefire. Why? To try and take more and more from the opposing side and tell them, well, if you don't agree, this is what we're going to do. And they even state that. In Israel, the leadership told Hezbollah, every day that passes without Hezbollah accepting our conditions for a ceasefire means more damage and destruction. Again, not necessarily against Hezbollah, because they're targeting everything in Lebanon. Are Hezbollah stopping? No, they're not. They're targeting the heart of Zionism, the Kiryah. And whichever unit they like, whichever room they like, whichever room they see fit, or department. You saw the 3D images that they were publishing. They know. They went to Benjamin Netanyahu's bedroom. Reports are coming from Israel that these drones go through the window. They go through windows and explode inside. And we saw this attack on one of the IDF units when they were having the Last Supper, their Last Supper. That's when it comes to Lebanon. Again, nothing confirmed yet when it comes to the ceasefire. We're having talks that they got the draft. We don't have any elaboration yet when it comes to the draft, but we have these statements coming. Moving on to the next, video that I wanted to share with you. We have... like we are saying many times lately, we have a pending response. And the Iranian army a few days back released this video. Saying True Promise 3. More talks. And now we have more figures, top figures in the establishment now saying that the response is coming again and they need to prepare. All of the indications that we're seeing from Iran, by the way, with this regard, are saying that we're expecting something big to happen, something at a bigger scale than what we saw before. And it's most likely going to be launched primarily from Iran. You know, these reports that said some of the attacks might happen from Iraq, Not very likely. I mean, we might have a couple of things or potentially something coordinated, but the biggest damage is going to most likely come from Iran, unless, that is, Iran and the resistance fronts are planning for the day of destruction, are planning for the all-out day. The all-out day where we could see a scenario of more than 5 figures in missiles launched at Israel simultaneously. So 10 to 20,000. If that scenario gets implemented, you're talking about 99% of the missiles landing, because all of Israel's air defenses will have no time to take anything down. And we just had more reports coming from US forces who participated in the interception attempts of the Iranian attacks, saying they were shocked at the level of missiles that were launched by Iran during Operation True Promise 2. If they were shocked, if the US forces were shocked by the number of missiles launched from Iran and capability of their missiles during Operation True Promise 2, what are they going to do with True Promise 3? What are they going to do? Ansarullah are targeting their destroyers and the aircraft carriers, and they're removing their aircraft carriers that they hoped would intimidate the region or the resistance fronts, something that hasn't happened and it is not going to happen. And they're saying that they're shocked by True Promise 2. Well, all we can say is, what are you going to do when it comes to True Promise 3? Which leads me to the final thing that I wanted to talk to you about, this report of Hezbollah targeting Benjamin Netanyahu's house again. This was published in IRNA. Hezbollah drones hit area where Netanyahu's home is located. Israeli media reported late on Thursday that an explosion was heard in the area where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu resides, located in Caesarea, near Haifa and Tel Aviv, according to the Lebanese Al Ahad news website. Well, there were explosions like all across Israel yesterday. Well, at least from central part above. Sirens, reports of sirens 24/7 and explosions almost everywhere. And it wouldn't be surprising if that was actually his house again. The reports indicate that a drone attack by Hezbollah was responsible for the explosion. And when we talk about specific reports about, for example, explosions near Benjamin Netanyahu's house, that's from Israelis on the ground. Why? Because you have many people protesting next to his residential house in Caesarea and his main residence location in Jerusalem too. He's most likely not going to be there for the majority of the time because his life is at risk. Many Israelis want him killed. And they would have an interest in showing where things actually land. Although the IDF issued many warnings for Israelis and for media as well not to disclose the locations of the missile landings so that they don't help the resistance. Hezbollah has launched multiple drone attacks on the area where Netanyahu's home is located in recent days. Some Zionist media outlets say that Netanyahu has been working in a fortified basement since the October drone attack conducted by the Lebanese resistance movement Hezbollah on his house. Also on October 19th, Zionist media reported that Hezbollah had launched explosive drone at Netanyahu's home in Caesarea in occupied Quds. I think that's something wrong there because Caesarea is not in Jerusalem, or if they mean the residing place that he has, the residence in Jerusalem. Israel's Channel 11 said that the drone was launched from Lebanon, traveled directly 70 kilometers, and then reached Netanyahu's home. The smoke caused by the explosion was visible from a remote distance. An informed source told Channel 12 that Netanyahu and his wife were not present in their home at the time of explosion. About a week after the attack, the office of the Israeli Prime Minister requested an additional budget of about $500,000 to strengthen the security services in Caesarea in the occupied territories. Of course, that's what he's worried about. Alongside a refurb for the pool, he's having a refurb done for the pool in the middle of an existential war and asking for more expenses on his personal home. With regards to the attack, by the way, the one that actually hit the window, there are many indications that Netanyahu was there and that Hezbollah operate in a very clever manner, knowing his movements. And that's why he's ordered by the manager of his security not to go anywhere unless authorized by him. And again, he's in fortified bases and trying to run away from death. Why are there big indications that he was there? He very quickly published a video walking in a garden, well, that appeared to be his garden in Caesarea. The man is scared. The man is petrified. So he's very paranoid now. He knows that they're coming for him and that they're not going to stop, and that they openly declared that they're trying to take away his life. Hezbollah confirmed, we tried to assassinate Netanyahu and we will continue to try and assassinate him. Maybe next time he won't be so lucky. Hezbollah openly confirmed that. And they also said that after they declared that, it's like, how can you really target the prime minister? People telling them. And their response was, you're talking about a country that has no boundaries. They slaughter children and women. They're child killers. And they targeted all of our leaders. What do you mean? Why do we target their prime minister? So he's very scared. Benjamin Netanyahu is very scared. He's very paranoid. Almost no one knows his whereabouts. The government meetings, the cabinet meetings, are always moved from one place to another. There is no permanent meeting place when it comes to Netanyahu after the location has been leaked and they had to cancel a meeting following certain alerts, again indicated that they are indicating that there are people inside of Israel passing this information. What are these Iranian rings that Israel exposed not long ago? Jewish Israelis, informants working for Iran, knowingly, not unknowingly. They know it's Iran. Many of them in prison. And these were only the reported ones. And then the confirmation that Itamar Ben-Gvir had assassination attempts against him and that the Israeli Shabak saved his life 5 times. Again, they might not be so lucky in any upcoming attempt. And these were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about, guys. And again, welcome and thank you so much for tuning in. And let's go and take some of your questions. Glenn Huxley, thank you for your super. HS, thank you for your super. HS, you have a new proposal. Mahmoud for Secretary of State. Dude would change the world. HS, I hope I'm perhaps doing something positive with what I do. Thank you so much. And I think doing this is probably better than being in corrupt governments. Cookie dough. And thank you so much, HS. Cookie dough, did the ballistic missile you showed a video from got intercepted? That glow that appeared, what was that? These were interception attempts, but we did not see an interception explosion. So it could have landed. We heard explosions. We saw fires in Israel. But again, remember the level of censorship. And Elvira, As well, thank you for your super. So thanks a lot, man. Much appreciated. Thank you. And Lydia Rosati said Trump and incoming extremist cabinet plan to annex all of the West Bank and Gaza. Russia keep their annexed areas of Ukraine if they stay out of Israel annexing. Thank you for that, Lydia. I heard that proposal, and it's not something that would be unlikely to be offered by the United States administration to Russia. You can keep some of the Ukrainian territories so long as you stay outside of what's happening in Palestine. But I think the days of the US administration trying to have these deals, thinking that they can get away with it at the expense of the actual population, are gone. The Palestinian people have sacrificed, the Lebanese people have sacrificed, the people of region have sacrificed so much because of continued United States state-sponsored terrorism at a mass scale in the West Asian region and across the world, that there is no going back. I believe that there is no going back. We are looking at a new era. Neither the United States nor anyone on earth has the right to dictate to the indigenous people of Palestine, of Lebanon, of the Levant, of Iran, of anywhere in the world, how they should live their lives and who they should choose and what way they should run their countries. They don't have any right on earth to tell that to anyone. How rude and how arrogant of them to even try and propose that. But then again, you're talking about neo-colonialist mentalities. People with a neo-colonialist, arrogant, supremacist mentality who believe that they can tell other people how to live and what to wear and who to choose and what to... They think that everyone in the world follows their materialistic approach of life. Everything means material progress, or you just simply need to follow us either or otherwise you die. Trying to bribe people. That ain't gonna happen. Plus, you haven't shown us a good example. If any of these people are clever, and if you would want to provide an alternative to something that you claim is bad, you need to offer a better alternative and show a good example. Have we seen a good example from the United States administration across the world? No. Have we seen a good example from Israel? No, we haven't. Israel says it wants to defeat the Hamas. I'll give them a tip. I'll give Israel a tip how to defeat the Hamas. Pull the rug. What does that mean? Take away every single reason that Hamas establishes its resistance on. What does Hamas establish its resistance on? Historical injustice against the Palestinian people, inequality, ethnic cleansing, mass genocide, oppression, brutality, and all of the things that everyone is seeing that Israel is committing nowadays. If Israel takes away all of these things and actually provides a solution for the people where they can see, well, Israel is providing a better alternative than Hamas, then maybe they might consider. But no, that's not the way. And that's not the way that the neo-colonialists operate in. They operate in a very arrogant manner because they have supremacy embedded in their nature. They believe they are above others. That's in their faith. They believe they are above others. The others are below them. And they say that. They openly say that. So you're talking about the point of no return. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. And look, in history, things took time. It's not like things change all of a sudden. It takes time. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of atrocities. But neither the United States nor its proxies will be dictating to the indigenous people of the Levant primarily, then followed by the other nations in West Asia, how they will live and what way would they want to run their countries, and they cannot control their destiny. You're also talking about people who have a lot of faith and who would rather die than live under the US administration or Zionist control. And that was from Lydia Rosato, and then Angela Brody, thank you so much as well. And Alan Marwin, you said, and thank you, Alan, you said Trump's cabinet Ziopics are freaking out pundits and Dems in the US, but the elite are as delusional as Israelis, so the US will fail to save Israel from itself, no matter how much money they spend. Yes, Trump speaks for the cabinet. They are very negative. He has many warmongers, many supremacists, many blatant Zionists, and they indicate his line of thought. Look, Trump is a person who is clear about his ideology. Trump has a very extremist and in many ways hate-filled approach towards ethnic minorities, towards Muslims. It doesn't matter how much he wants to cover it up, and all it takes is go back to his statements from a few years back. Now he's trying to change his tone, or try to change his tone to get the votes from Kamala Harris. However, saying all of that, Trump is also unpredictable. Or, to be more accurate, Trump can be unpredictable. Another thing to add, during his term between 2016 to 2020, we haven't seen as many wars as we saw with the Democrats, of course, apart from the Bush administration, you know. But what we do know for sure is that Donald Trump served Israel in his term. Donald Trump openly declares that he serves Israel and that he is on Israel's side. Donald Trump received over 100 million from Miriam Edelson. That's only what's declared. And Donald Trump has appointed pro-Zionist warmongers, Zio-neocons, I call them, in his cabinet. And again, how relevant is that? That's the question. I don't think the President of the United States should be relevant to the region of West Asia. Why should we even think about him? You're the President of the United States. Take care of your own people. They chose you. You're responsible for them. Improve their lives. Improve their healthcare, improve the safety, improve the security inside of the United States, improve the economy, improve the poverty, improve the rough sleepers, improve your epidemics here and there, improve all of that. And stay away from the wall, because wherever the United States administration set its foot, it caused corruption. And like I said, they should not be relevant. Neither him nor any other Western leader should be relevant, even relevant, to the region of West Asia. You have your countries, deal with your problems. And Lord knows you're not dealing with the problems of your own countries, nor the problems of your own citizens. And again, we're seeing a shift. And that shift has had a tremendous progress in the past year. Of course, tremendous atrocities and tremendous sacrifices, but also tremendous progress. Things are changing, and we are on our way to see a world that is different. And again, that doesn't mean everything's going to be all roses, you know what I mean, or utopic, but we saw what the world is like under the United States hegemony. Merciless killing, mass murders, wars, nuclear bombs landing on innocent civilians, millions dying in Asia, in Latin America, in West Asia. We saw what happens. And they still have that same arrogant supremacist approach when it comes to other nations, as if they know better than them. And they still think that they have the right to tell other nations how to live and what to wear and what they should believe in. And that was from Alan Marwin. Thank you so much for that, Alan. And I'll move on to your next one. And just a reminder, if anyone has a question for me, if you wouldn't mind just highlighting it, and if you wouldn't mind restricting it 1 or 2 times, you know, if it's the same one, so that we go to other questions as well. Angela Brody is asking me about, in the headline, isn't real, bombed Iran's nuclear facility, true or propaganda? That's very interesting you mentioned that. So we had a couple of reports today that Israel actually targeted an Iranian nuclear facility during their attack on Iran a few weeks back. And the first thing that comes to mind, Iran has just met with the IAEA to talk about their nuclear program and reassure them and show openness and willingness to cooperate with the IAEA. I hope I didn't make a mistake with their name, but basically the main nuclear organization. And all of a sudden we have this report. Okay. If you had such a massive success, well, why don't you publish it immediately? If there was any urge for Israel to show success when it comes to their attack on Iran, that was a miserable failure, and that was successfully intercepted to a very large extent. The majority of the attack was taken down, the projectiles or the missiles, and Israel didn't dare come next to the Persian Gulf or Iran itself. Well, why didn't you publish it at the time? It was more pressing to publish this information at the time. Why didn't they publish it then? Publishing it now is to, again, stir problems and also try and hinder the project or push Iran to have some sort of a retaliation or something. That's if they kept it secret and published it now so that they can put Iran in a corner. Now, we have talks, of course, about a pending response from Iran, but don't forget one other thing. We also have reports about a preemptive, you know, they dare and call it preemptive, strike from Israel, and of course backed by the United States, because Israel does nothing without the United States. Israel is nothing without the United States. Let everyone be very, very aware of that fact. And in many cases, the United States administration is much worse than Israel, by the way, because they are enabling them. They are supporting them knowingly, them and every other establishment that supports them. The British government, the German government, all of them, they are worse genociders than Israel. Don't forget that. So if we have talks about this potential preemptive strike, when it comes to Israel and the United States against Iran, they would want to instigate Iran a little bit more, or if Iran is about to have an attack, they want to push for the attack at their time, the time that they want. Why? Because in the previous attack of Iran, in the last attack, True Promise 2, they did not give any sign. The United States, only through its satellite systems, they managed to see suspicious movements coming from Iran. They notified Israel just a couple of hours before. I mean, the reports came out even minutes before Iran started to attack. And as soon as Israel said, you know, we might have an attack from Iran, all of a sudden, first you have an operation inside of central Israel, and then you had this massive attack from Iran. That was an extreme success from the Iranians, because the majority of the missiles landed, and I spent 6 hours covering it at the time. So it could well be a propaganda. And again, you know, if they had this massive accomplishment, well, why didn't they publish it before, right? Everyone was criticizing you at the time. You could have told everyone, well, look what we've done. We also targeted their nuclear program. And also, where did all of the talk go about them not targeting their nuclear program and their oil program? Where did that go? Right? Do you remember? They only said we targeted military. All of a sudden, you change the. You see, it's like they are insisting on proving that they constantly lie, that they are hyper-pathological liars. And that was from Angela Brody. Clone 994, did Netanyahu know about October 7th? He did. And yesterday or the day before, I spoke about the IDF talking about him knowing and them notifying the Netanyahu office 4 hours before. And these are only IDF confirmations. There were other confirmations too. However, of course, he had a plan. He had a plan for Gaza, to ethnically cleanse Gaza and have a larger Jewish demographic majority, expel the Palestinian population, establish new squatting establishments in Gaza, and also take the energy fields, gas or oil fields next to Gaza. Why? Because 2 weeks after October the 7th, the biggest attack that Israel faced in its history, that led to an existential threat, Netanyahu decides to hand out gas exploration contracts to multinational companies. Wow. But in reality, the establishment inside of Israel knew before, days, if not weeks before. Why? One other indication was one of Israel's largest banks, it's called Bank Leumi. Bank Leumi made short bettings that were unusual for the bank to carry out. And they made approximately 600 million, either Israeli shekels or dollars, in profit because of their bets that they made, stock shorting. And I spoke about that report about a year ago. And there were many indications that they knew, not just like the IDF now saying, they're trying to downplay it as well. But what we do know is that they are publishing information. And it also shows you the level of distrust between Netanyahu and his army. Mystic Mother X's with Donald Trump. Do you think they will start stopping you putting anything against Israel on it? Well, me personally, you have many people on X who have millions of followers. I have barely a couple of thousand followers on X. But because Donald Trump, will they start stopping? Well, I'll tell you one thing. I mean, I know Elon Musk was in Israel and he met Netanyahu, but you can still post a lot of stuff on X. You can still post everything that comes from the ground on X. Meaning that although they have pressure on them, they are still allowing a level of freedom of speech. Now, mind you, every platform will have limitations. Listen, we usually like to complain in general about censorship, and rightfully so, we should. And, usually when you talk about democracy within certain institutions or organizations or technology companies, democratizing these institutions, the action needs to always be thorough. So you need to always try and expand the scope and level of freedom when it comes to these organizations, like you should with government policies. Protesting and criticizing and speaking despite the intimidation and despite the threats coming from the government and its arms, with whatever reasons, really, with draconian laws put there on unsubstantiated basis just to silence people. And why do you need to do that? Because if you don't, then the circle will start to close on you. And this is what, many people are not very aware of, that fact, that the circle starts to tighten up on everyone's freedom of speech. And if of course, if you want freedom of speech, you need to respect the fact that the opposing side will have freedom of speech. Now, where do we stop? What is the actual limit? We've seen that there's a lot of politics behind it. A lot of politics. Why? Because a country committing a genocide and genocide supporters who actually support the ethnic cleansing on people based on their religious or ethnic identity are allowed. War criminals, child murderers, rapists, they're allowed. I don't think that that's something appropriate, whilst trying to simultaneously silence the opposing side and intimidate. I do believe firmly, though, that everyone should have a right to speak, but not in a manner where you would start justifying mass murder of people just based on their religious background, for example, or racial background. Do you understand? So with X in particular, I mean, he still has his own social media company, Trump, Truth Social, when X banned him before, when it was Twitter. But now, of course, Musk is going to be in his government now. To this day, they showed that there is a level of freedom of speech there. And of course, you still would have criticism. Like we would have criticism for this platform and other platforms too, the scope can increase and decrease here and there. And also, don't forget that, with these companies too, you're talking about big organizations. And apart from the criticism when it comes to the politicized move and the actual agendas behind them and the Zionist lobby trying to pressure and spend billions on these things, they spend billions. And that's very tempting for some companies. And they spend these billions in different times, by the way. That's why you'll see you'll sometimes feel, if you're constantly active on social media, that you kind of have a censorship boost, right? All of a sudden, oh my God, where am I? I'm not seeing this person, or I'm being shadow banned, or because the money is being spent at that time. However, of course, look, we work with what we have. I think it's important to appreciate the scope that we do have, because at the end of the day, it was impossible to share this much information before, and it's good that we have what we have. But of course, we should always criticize and work to improve, review, refine, reform, the triple R, as I call them. And thank you so much for that. That was from Mystic Mother. And Riza, also thank you for your super. Said Trump during his first term had 2 Secretary of Defense and 2 Secretaries of State. He will probably get into arguments with his cabinet nominees before taking office. It's difficult to work with Trump. Your thoughts, please. I totally agree. He had so many changes. He's clearly difficult to work with. And Trump clearly doesn't really get the dynamics properly of being in power. And look, he comes from a business background. He tries to use his business tactics in politics, and that's not always going to work. He also has tendencies to act like, your local bully. This type of approach, and not necessarily look for the long term. So I would assume that he would have to have some changes, by the way. Like when I saw the appointments of the cabinet, I was thinking, like, when are they going to resign or be fired? So many changes. White House, in the White House, the spokespersons, people leaving, people coming. Nothing was stable, and the problem is when you do that, when you're running a country, if you have someone in a position and they started working on a certain project, on a certain agenda to be implemented in a certain field, whatever it is, the environment, and they start taking on projects and they have their teams working with, if you sack them, well, you even if you keep some of the team members, right, working under them or assisting, you completely blow up the dynamics. You can't have this authoritarian approach when you're in power. And like I said, Trump he's also unpredictable. That's another problem. You need to have a level of predictability when you're in power. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like you said, we will be seeing changes. And Amin Dania, thank you. You said the resistance is the only ones enforcing the international binding obligations to stop the crimes against humanity going on. 1,000,000%. The resistance is working for humanity now. Some people, might see that as far-fetched. No. They are working for humanity. They're fighting for humanity. And that's why you have such a massive campaign against them. But don't forget one thing. The campaign against the resistance is from a very small number of governments in a very small number of countries in the world. Usually the United States administration and its 34, 35 puppet states. Many of them with a rich history of colonialism and mass enslavement and racism and fascism and you name it. So they're a minority. They're a minority globally, but they have loud mouths and they control the media. Therefore, they can pretend like they are the international community. They can pretend like they are the world. They can pretend like they are the international community. When the United States administration talks to you about the international community, or, when the British government talks about the international community, or the French government or the German government, the international community, which international community are you talking about? You're talking about the US Ziosphere. That's it. They disregard the rest of the world. They disregard the East. They disregard what is now labeled more as the global South. They disregard all of that. So don't be fooled or don't be tricked into believing that they even represent the world. They don't represent the world. Most of the population on Earth supports the resistance. And most of the population of the Earth and the countries of the world do not view the Palestinian, the Lebanese, the Yemeni, the Iraqi resistance and Iran the same way that the United States establishment views them alongside their allies. They don't. They view them as heroes. And guess what? They view the United States and its proxies as the forces they are, the forces of terror, the forces of mass murder, the forces of genocide and supremacy and arrogance as well. And the resistance in the Levant and in the area, they are fighting a fight for humanity. In any attempt to take down rightful causes based on justice and based on equality, you will see people standing up with that cause, and you'll see people standing against that cause. Usually the people standing against that cause are the people who have an interest to stand against that cause. And they are usually nothing to do with masses. People who have interest. They will do whatever they can They will do whatever they can to make them fail. Why? Because if you have any movement that calls for equality, for human rights, anti-war, pro-humanity, what does the success do? It starts to resonate. It starts to resonate with other people, with other countries, with other nations. And you will start to see certain tendencies. Why do so many Arab governments and states not lift a finger against the genocide entity when their Palestinian brothers and sisters are being slaughtered? Because if the Palestinians emerge victorious, that would give a sign to their population living under authoritarianism and lack of freedom. And they don't want that. So they would rather Israel prevails at the cost of all of the children being killed, all of the women, all of the destruction. And likewise, of course, with many people in power. They don't want these examples. And Sean Hurl, thank you very much for you, my friend. And also Josie Buzz, thank you very much. Thank you so much for your kind comments and support. Let's see if we have anything else. Ramplans, the only good pick from Trump is RFK Jr. for health minister. You know, when I first started to listen to RFK, I thought, you know, there's a vibe of change up until it comes to Israel. What's wrong with these people? Anyone, when it comes to Israel, they start to become like slaves to this satanic master. What's the problem? He started to defend Israel. Anyone who defends Israel is nothing. From my perspective, they're immediately void. Cancel. That's it. Nothing. I don't care about anything they say. If you support this genocidal entity, you are like them. You are exactly like them. If you show support. So you can have good ideas. You can have, I couldn't care less about you or any of your ideas. Why? Because you support the mass slaughter and genocide of innocent people. Sorry. Says enough about you. If you do not prioritize life and don't appreciate that every life is sacred, null, zero. And he's one of them. RFK Jr. is one of them. Tam McIntosh, Mahmoud, what do you make of Musk's meeting with the Iranian UN ambassador? I haven't heard about that, actually. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Let's have a look. Elon Musk met... Oh, that's out just now. Oh, no, there was a report from yesterday. From the New York Times. Also published on Reuters. Elon Musk met with Iran's UN ambassador, New York Times reports. And what did they say? November 14th, billionaire Elon Musk, who is an advisor to US President-elect Donald Trump, met with Iran's ambassador to the United Nations on Monday. The New York Times reported on Thursday, citing two Iranian officials. The newspaper reported that the meeting was a discussion of how to diffuse tensions between Iran and the United States. Well, if that's the case, that's good. If the report is correct, then good. We need to diffuse tensions. You see, this hostile approach has been generated and pushed by the United States administration and the Zionists, the warmongers. People profiteering from global conflicts. If it's true, then good. But these reports based on officials, you can only take them with a pinch of salt. But if they are true, then good. I mean, you should be able to have good relationships with every country, so long as they're not committing a genocide. Okay. Gulliberg, Mahmoud, are the attacks by the Geno cartel on Yemen just to put up a show for Netanyahu? The Houthis are unaffected by them. Yeah, you're right. The Houthis are not affected by them. I mean, as a matter of fact, the coalition itself, if you recall, it was supposed to be a bigger coalition. It included approximately 7 countries. Later on, the majority of the European nations, apart from Britain, they decided not to participate in the act of in the action itself, in the enforcement, but only some of them, would send observers or something to do with support. So it ended up being the United States and Britain sending forces. Now, from the United States and British establishment's perspective and administrations, they did not want Ansarullah in Yemen to dictate their dealing with Israel. They didn't want to set a precedent of Yemen dictating who Israel can and cannot deal with. Why? Because Israel is the little puppet, is the little creation of Britain, and is the little proxy of the United States. Britain created Israel, and the United States became its main supporter after the fall of the British Empire. So these two countries have a very special relationship with this Zion-Nazi state. Now, they're the same, which means they're the same, basically. They have a lot of interest with them. They still support them militarily. They are participants in the genocide, the United States and Britain. And they also economically are tied with Israel. They knew that Israel would be engaged in, committing a genocide. So they want Israel to be free to kill children as much as possible without any trouble. So the United States and Britain said, okay, if Israel is too busy murdering children and killing women and, destroying hospitals and churches and mosques in Palestine, and they have plans to expand to Lebanon, let us make life easier for them, and we will go to Yemen. So they went to Yemen, and like we call them in Arabic, Abu Yemen, they showed them what they're about. Yemen, what they're doing against the genocide forces of Britain and the United States in the Red Sea, what they're doing is beyond comprehension. Targeting destroyers of the biggest forces in the world, targeting US aircraft carriers and forcing them, expelling them from a place they shouldn't even be in. Who are you, you neo-colonialist racists, to go and dictate to Yemen what to do in the Red Sea? Who are you? They still live in the same old colonial, supremacist, ugly, racist mentality. And going to do what? Going to try and stop Yemen from imposing a perfectly legitimate blockade and embargo on a country committing genocide and war crimes as confirmed by the highest court on earth. What does that tell you? That tells you what Britain and the United States are, what they are about, who they are as entities, as establishments, and who they support. They are genocidal establishments supporting a country committing the worst crimes in history. And they have been unaffected. They have been ineffective with Yemen. And Yemen has been unaffected, was not affected by them and by their attempts to take down their continued attacks. And we were at stage 5 of Yemen's operations. Do you understand what that means? They couldn't stop stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now they even declared that they will be targeting companies acting like they are not Israel, but they are Israel. See? And why? Oh, every single time we have a statement from Yemen. And that's why, of course, your mainstream media wouldn't show you that. In support for our Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza facing a genocide. In support for the valiant Palestinian people of Gaza being killed and slaughtered. Supporting the people who are oppressed. This is what any honorable, a genuine nation that cares about human rights would do. And that shows you that Britain and the United States do not care about human rights and are only interested in preserving their neo-colonialist, supremacist little genocidal entity called Israel. They have no interest in anything to do with human rights and equality and every single slogan they bang on about and try and lecture other nations about. They do not care about any of that. They go against the values that they promote themselves. And it shows you how deep-rooted this cancer is in the Western establishment, to a level where it's making people surprised. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are we enabling it? And when I say we, I mean, well, the establishment, our government. Why are they still doing that? Why are they not listening to us? You know, I thought we were living in a democracy. Isn't democracy about listening to your people? Tory, what US Mossad false flag operation is most likely to take place to fully excuse an attack on Iran? They don't need an excuse. I mean, I think it has been very clear that no one needs an excuse to carry out an operation. Because what could be considered a red line now? US aircraft carriers are being targeted. What's a red line? The heart of the genocide entity is targeted daily. The main hub. The Prime Minister of Israel is being targeted every single day almost. What's the red line? We're past the red lines. There are no false flags. It's an open war. It's an open war that is likely to continue for quite some time, by the way, by the looks of it. Because even after a year, the genocide cartel is still trying to dictate. They're still trying to dictate. They're that arrogant. And they're trying to dictate and using the genocide against the people and the mass slaughter and infanticide as leverage in negotiations. They butcher infants for leverage. This is what they do. So they don't really, if they want to have a preemptive strike now before True Promise 3, they can do it. The question is, to what extent will the United States go to when it comes to that? Because they know their vulnerabilities. And it doesn't matter what they try and promise Putin. Even Russia knows what they're about. And when you talk about Iran, you talk about Russia and China and North Korea and other parties too. Cookie dough, you're talking about the source that there are international binding obligations. I've tried to find, but didn't find support for that. I think if you visit the ICJ or the UN as well, I mean, the ICJ is considered the judicial organ of the UN, you would be able to find articles and laws. However, when you talk about international law, like I said, you would find many good laws. I mean, if international law worked properly with enforcement, we'd be living in a wonderful world. But it isn't. It isn't, unfortunately. It's there for the powerful to be used against the weak. And to a very large extent, it's a show. Nothing more. Because the United Nations has many resolutions against Israel. The ICJ told them, you are committing a genocide, stop committing a genocide. Western mainstream media was ignoring the hearings. Did you remember? You had no covering of the hearing even, as if there's nothing happening. When Russia was attacking Ukraine, well, within a month, everything, sanctions, war crimes, blah, 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 blah. Non-stop. Why? Because Uncle Sam told them. The US master told them, the establishment, you need to. Why? Because we want to take them down. We want to control Russia. We want to control its resources. And we want to plant a servant in the Kremlin. So they all started to follow by spreading Russophobia and everything. But international law is non-functional. It's ink on paper. The only language that is being practiced globally now is the language of force in international relations. And if international law indeed was implemented, it was good. Well, read the UN Declaration of Universal Human Rights. Oof. Beautiful. Implemented. So yeah, even if you do find them, the question is, what's the enforcement mechanism? You see, we can talk a lot, but at the end of the day, what works? What can you do that can have results on the ground? We need something to be enforced. We need a mechanism that works. If you're going to have a Security Council that goes and orders a country to do something and it doesn't do it, if you have the International Court of Justice ordering a country, so the International Court giving you an order and you don't comply, what happens to you as an individual? If you live in the United States, any country that actually has laws, and you get a court order and you do not comply with the order, what happens? You have enforcement against you. And if the enforcement doesn't get implemented, what does that say? That the country is dysfunctional. There's something wrong in the state. And in any state where you have a judicial system that works, that law needs to be implemented. So the police go to the courts give them an order, or whatever it is, you need to implement that order. They go and they implement that order, and they have enforcement. Someone killed, we have evidence that they killed, we saw a camera, it recorded it. He lives in that location, in that street. You need to come and you are under arrest. No, I don't want to come. Will the country let him go? Okay, so no problem, don't come. But you can do that at a state level when you commit mass killings. That's this is the argument that you should always be thinking about. Think about how the justice system works at you as an individual, and compare it how international law is being implemented on a state like Israel. So if you want to take an example and talk about an individual, imagine having a mass murderer sitting next to your house, shooting children coming, playing around, and shooting innocent civilians, shooting women for no reason, just for fun, and posting videos about it online, your neighbor, and the country's not doing anything with him. Would you feel safe? No. But why is that allowed when it comes to this state? and international law is not implemented? Because the system is broken and the international law is not implemented. And the United Nations is the long, soft arm of the United States for the United States to implement what it wants, whenever it wants, in certain locations where it finds it a little bit more challenging to reach. Otherwise, why did the US and the UK and the NATO get away with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan? Didn't they commit war crimes? How many war crimes did they commit? How many internationally banned weapons did they use in Fallujah and elsewhere? How many? Tell me. Millions were killed. Why? Because they're above the law. The law is usually on the poor and the weak, not for the rich and powerful. You know, let alone when you talk about, you know, governmental level. And we'll wrap it up there, guys. Actually, I'll take just one more from Shambali, this one, and we'll finish it there. Shambali said, Mahmoud, do you think if Iran damages Israel badly in True Promise 3 that Trump and his Zio hawks will back down, or will they hit Iran hard? This is because this is a really interesting question. Israel says it's in an existential war. It has been saying that for over a year. The prime minister says that. Top figures in the government say that. Many people say that. We are in an existential war. In this existential war, you had genocide supporting establishments in many countries, including, of course, first and foremost, the genocide cartel. The United States, some European countries, you know, the US Ziosphere. Did they intervene to protect Israel to a level where this existential threat is removed? You can have a long answer. They participated in arming them. They helped them a little bit with Yemen. They helped them with the interception of certain missiles. Yeah. They did that, totally. But did they go and fight on their behalf to remove this threat? They haven't. When we had escalations when it comes to the bigger players like Iran, what did the United States do? When the United States has the most sophisticated army, I mean the most advanced equipment, and they told Israel, we're not going to fight. You know, we'll help you intercept. Biden, when they intercepted the first attack or some of it, he said, you got the win, take the win. Indicating and saying, and the defense minister, the American defense minister said at the time, you know, we're not going to participate with Israel, but we'll help them defend themselves. And of course, they'll condemn Iran and all of the usual garbage. Likewise with other countries too. What does that say? That says that so long as Israel at the forefront, fine, but we won't be the forefront. We won't be in the forefront. This is what we're understanding so far. Could that change? Yes, it could change. However, if the argument is, will the United States establishment and the traditional supporters of the genocide supremacist state save Israel, well, why don't you go and send all of your armies from the beginning then? To take down the threat and show presence and. What are you exactly waiting for? Netanyahu is being targeted. The hub of control is being targeted. You know, what's gonna make you go and actually actively put yourselves in the front? Many things. Number one, they might want Israel to fight up until the end. They'll profiteer from this war. And if they collapse, they have a plan for the day after that they would hope could be implemented, but most likely no. It will be the final kick for the neo-colonialists from West Asia and the Levant, once and for all. And that's the first one. The second one is, well, we might in the last second participate. It's going to be too late. What do you mean? If they participate in the last second, that means they have leverage, right? And if they have leverage, that means Israel doesn't have a say in all of the consequences. So if you have foreign forces on Palestinian occupied territories, they will have a bigger say. And maybe Israel doesn't want that, because Israel doesn't trust anyone, by the way. They don't trust the US, they don't trust Britain, they don't trust anyone. They view them as below them. They view all of them as goyim, servants of the Zionist master. That's in their belief. I think the United States has a plan for the day after Israel. That plan is most likely malicious, because it would try and create something that would continue the problem, like what the British Empire did, firstly in Palestine, then in other parts of the world where they occupied, to continue the problem and prevent any sort of revival for these nations, for them to have sovereignty and enjoy their national goods and progress and develop. They don't want that. But it's no longer a case of what they want. Now it's the case of what the people want. And the people have sacrificed, and the people are still standing up for their right. The people are getting international support from honorable people. They are not getting support from everyone, but hey, you don't need support from everyone. And you're never going to have a case where it's all against no one. Do you know what I mean? You're always going to have people on both sides. Things are changing, and they are changing quickly. And it doesn't matter what the United States tries to do. After the collapse of Israel, you're going to have a new era, and we are witnessing that era happening in front of our eyes. We'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Thank you for everyone who participated. Thank you for everyone who sent messages and questions and supers. Josie Buzz, Sean, Hurl, Amin, Dania, Riza, Alan Marwin, Angela Brody, Lydia Rosato, Elvira Gabriela, Cookie Dough HS, and Glenn Huxley. Thank you very much. And of course, all of you, all of our viewers, members and subscribers, and everyone around the world. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Friday morning, day, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where you are, and the rest of your weekend. Stay blessed. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. And I will hopefully see you soon in the next video and live stream. Peace, everyone. Take care and stay blessed.